A person can fake happiness for a very long time. Long enough to laugh with people, while secretly feeling emotionally dead inside. That kind of pain is strange, because nobody sees it. You still function, still talk, still smile. But internally, you are exhausted from carrying disappointment. Disappointment from people, from memories, from constantly giving your heart to hands that did not deserve it. And eventually, something terrifying happens. You stop expecting goodness from anyone. Not because you hate humanity, because experience taught you caution. You begin analyzing every word, every promise, every smile. Not out of paranoia, out of survival. Because the same heart that once loved deeply was also the same heart abandoned repeatedly. Do you know what hurts the most? Realizing you were slowly disappearing while trying to save everyone else. You kept understanding people, forgiving people, defending people, while nobody noticed your soul collapsing quietly in the background. That changes a man, not physically, spiritually. He becomes quieter, harder to reach, harder to hurt. Not because he lost emotions, because emotions became dangerous for him. And people will say, you changed. No. Pain changed the way you survive. After that, life starts feeling different. Not darker, not brighter, just emptier. You walk through crowds and suddenly realize you no longer feel connected to anyone. That is the frightening part. Not sadness, not anger. Detachment. People think becoming emotionally numb makes you strong. Oh yes, very poetic, very mysterious, very cold Sigma male. But they do not understand what it actually costs. It costs warmth. It costs innocence. It costs the ability to trust somebody without analyzing every tiny change in their voice. Because once betrayal enters the nervous system enough times, your body starts treating affection like danger. And suddenly, you become the person who stays quiet, the person who disappears for hours, days, sometimes weeks, not to manipulate anyone, just to breathe without pressure. Because deep down, you became tired of performing happiness for people who never cared about your suffering. Funny world. They ignore your pain when you speak softly, but panic the moment you stop speaking at all. You know what really destroys a human being? Holding everything in. Every humiliation, every fake apology, every moment you needed help but heard silence instead. That pressure stays inside the chest, inside the throat, inside the mind. And one day, the soul cannot carry it anymore. So the personality changes, not because the person wanted darkness. Darkness adapted to them first. You stop arguing, stop defending yourself, stop asking people to understand your intentions, because you finally realize people usually understand. They just do not care enough to act differently. That realization. That realization kills something inside a person forever. After that, you become quieter around everyone. more observant, more distant, not cruel, not heartless, just careful. Because the version of you that loved too deeply did not survive this world. And nobody notices the funeral. That is the strange thing about emotional death. There are no ambulances, no crowds, no prayers. A person just keeps walking while something beautiful inside them slowly disappears. Sometimes it happens during a random night. You sit alone, staring at the ceiling, too mentally exhausted to even cry anymore. And suddenly, you realize nobody truly knows how much pain you survived silently. Not even the people closest to you. Because you mastered the dangerous art of hiding suffering behind normal conversations. Yeah, I'm good. Just tired. Everything's fine. Meanwhile, your mind is collapsing in complete silence. That is what prolonged disappointment does to a soul. It teaches you emotional isolation. You stop reaching out, stop expecting comfort, stop believing anyone will stay long enough to understand you deeply. And honestly, part of you becomes addicted to solitude. Not because loneliness feels good, because it feels safer than attachment, safer than hoping, safer than trusting words. The terrifying part is, people usually notice your coldness before they notice what caused it. They judge the reaction, but ignore the damage. They remember the moment you changed, but forget the 1,000 moments that forced you to. And after enough pain, your heart begins operating differently. You stop getting excited too quickly. Stop believing promises too easily. Stop attaching your peace to human behavior. Because experience whispered something cruel into your spirit. Care less or suffer more. So you adapt, quietly, painfully. You become harder to impress, harder to manipulate, harder to emotionally control. Not because you became powerful, because you became tired. Tired of giving loyalty to temporary people. Tired of draining yourself trying to save connections already dying. Tired of being emotionally available in a world that rewards emotional emptiness. And eventually, you stop searching for people who understand you. You just pray for peace inside your own mind. Sometimes, the most damaged people are not the loud ones, not the screaming ones, not the violent ones. It is the quiet person, sitting there with a calm face, while fighting chaos inside their own head. You can almost hear the exhaustion in their breathing, because carrying emotional pain for years changes the nervous system. It changes the eyes, the reactions. Even the silence feels heavier. And eventually, they stop trying to explain themselves. Not because they have nothing to say, because they are tired of speaking to people who only understand pain after it becomes visible. That is why some humans suddenly disappear emotionally. One day they are warm, present, loyal. Then slowly, they become distant, quiet, unreadable. Not out of arrogance, out of survival. Because every time they opened their heart, someone treated it carelessly. Funny, People always say communication is important, but nobody talks about how exhausting communication becomes when you are constantly misunderstood. So the soul adapts differently. It becomes observant instead of expressive, cold instead of hopeful, controlled instead of emotional. And the terrifying part? After enough suffering, peace starts feeling unfamiliar. You become so used to emotional pain that calmness almost feels suspicious. That is how deeply hurt people think. Always scanning, always analyzing, always preparing for disappointment, even while smiling. Because deep down, they remember every moment they were abandoned while struggling silently. Every ignored message, every fake promise, every moment they begged internally for someone to simply care. But nobody came. So they learned something dangerous. Never depend emotionally on people who benefit from your weakness. That lesson changes a person permanently. After that, they stop chasing love, stop chasing validation, stop chasing understanding. And instead, they begin protecting whatever remains of their peace. Because once a heart breaks too many times, it no longer fears loneliness, it fears attachment. And that fear, most people will never understand it correctly. They think you became distant because you are arrogant, cold, emotionless. No. You simply learned what emotional pain does to a human mind when it repeats too many times. A strange thing happens after enough disappointment. The body continues living, but the spirit becomes cautious of everything. You start hesitating before opening messages, before answering calls, before trusting smiles. Not because you hate people, because experience taught you that attachment can become a weapon, especially when your heart is soft. Soft people suffer differently. They remember tones, energy shifts, tiny changes in behavior. They replay conversations inside their head for hours, wondering where everything started falling apart. And while everyone else moves on casually, they stay awake fighting memories. That is why emotionally exhausted people become quiet. Not because they have nothing inside them, because there is too much inside them. Too many thoughts, too many disappointments, too many wounds hidden behind controlled expressions. You know what truly breaks someone? Realizing they gave genuine love to people who only loved convenience. That realization feels like poison entering the chest slowly, because suddenly, every memory changes meaning. Every smile looks suspicious. Every promise sounds artificial. And the mind starts asking dangerous questions. Was any of it real? Did they ever truly care? Or was I only useful? Those questions can destroy a person internally, especially the loyal ones, the ones who stayed too long. The ones who kept forgiving while secretly bleeding emotionally. Because loyal people rarely break immediately. No, they endure, and endure, and endure, until eventually their soul collapses all at once. And when that collapse happens, they stop becoming emotionally available. Not out of revenge, not to manipulate anyone, but because survival finally becomes more important than attachment. Funny, isn't it? People will ignore your suffering for years, then complain the moment your personality changes. as if pain is supposed to leave a person untouched, as if betrayal does not rewire the mind. But it does. Pain teaches silence. Pain teaches emotional control. Pain teaches people how to hide sadness behind eye contact and short answers. And after enough heartbreak, a person stops looking for happiness in others completely. They begin searching for something much more important: peace. Real peace. The kind that does not disappear depending on who stays or leaves. Because deep inside, they finally understood a brutal truth. Not everybody who smiles at you values your heart. Not everybody who says, "I'm here," will stay when life becomes heavy. And once you truly understand that, you never love the same way again. After that realization, you begin seeing the world differently. Not emotionally, psychologically. You start noticing how easily people abandon each other now. How quickly loyalty disappears when convenience ends. People call it protecting their peace. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is just selfishness wearing soft words. And the scary part? The truly damaged people can recognize emotional emptiness immediately. The fake empathy, the temporary affection, the forced concern. Because suffering sharpens observation. Pain turns sensitive people into analysts. You begin reading pauses, tone shifts, delayed replies, energy changes. Not because you are obsessive, because disappointment trained your instincts to survive emotionally. That is why some humans become emotionally distant without warning. Not because they stopped loving deeply, because they became terrified of what deep love costs. A soft heart experiences betrayal differently. It does not just hurt for a day, it echoes for weeks, months, sometimes years. Especially when the person genuinely cared. Especially when they stayed loyal while silently destroying themselves emotionally. And eventually, they stop expecting fairness from people altogether. Not in a bitter way, in a realistic way. They understand now, humans often protect themselves first, even if it destroys you. That truth creates emotional loneliness, because after seeing enough disappointment, you no longer relax around affection completely. Part of you always stays alert, always prepared for the moment someone changes. And honestly, that level of caution is exhausting. You begin missing the old version of yourself sometimes, the naive version, the warm version, the version that trusted people naturally without overanalyzing everything. But that version suffered too much, so your mind buried him. Not because he was weak, because he was too vulnerable for this world. You know what is heartbreaking? Watching yourself slowly become emotionally unavailable, while remembering you were once full of love. That contrast hurts. Especially late at night, when the noise disappears, when distractions stop working, when memories start returning one by one. The ignored efforts, the fake promises, the moments you were emotionally drowning while pretending to be okay so nobody would worry. Funny, people only notice your pain after your personality changes visibly, not during the silent suffering, not during the emotional exhaustion, Not during the nights you were breaking mentally while still being kind to everyone. That kind of loneliness changes a human deeply. It creates emotional fatigue, a state where the soul no longer wants drama, or revenge, or even explanations anymore. It just wants rest. Real rest. Not sleep, not distraction. Inner silence. Freedom from emotional chaos. Freedom from carrying everybody while nobody carries you. And after enough pain, people stop begging for love entirely. They start protecting their energy instead, protecting their time, their peace, their emotional stability. Because once someone experiences repeated emotional destruction, they understand something dangerous. Not every connection deserves access to your heart. That lesson is expensive. Very expensive. It costs innocence. It costs softness. Sometimes, it costs the entire version of you that once believed people would never intentionally hurt you. And after that dies, you still smile, still function, still continue life, but something inside you becomes permanently quieter. Not dead, not evil, just careful with love now. And being careful with love can feel lonely in ways words cannot explain. Because now, every emotion passes through caution first. Every attachment, every conversation, every moment of vulnerability. Your heart no longer opens naturally. It studies people first. The eyes, the tone, the consistency, especially the consistency. Because damaged people understand something others ignore. Words mean nothing without patterns. Anyone can sound caring temporarily. Anyone can say, "I'll stay." The real truth appears during difficult moments, during pressure, distance, misunderstandings, emotional exhaustion. That is where masks begin falling apart. And unfortunately, you learned that lesson through pain instead of wisdom. You learned it while emotionally overextending yourself for people who barely appreciated your presence, while sacrificing sleep, energy, mental stability. Funny thing about loyal people, they destroy themselves quietly. Not because they enjoy suffering, because they keep hoping their effort will eventually be valued. But sometimes, people become comfortable receiving love they never intended to return equally. That realization leaves scars, deep ones, especially when you remember how genuine your intentions were. You were not trying to manipulate anyone, not trying to control anyone. You simply cared deeply. And somehow, that became the reason you suffered the most. That is why emotionally exhausted people become colder with time. Not immediately, slowly. Like winter entering a house through tiny cracks. At first, you still try, still give chances, still explain your feelings calmly. But after enough disappointment, your energy changes. You stop fighting for attention, stop forcing communication, stop trying to convince people to value your existence. Because real care should not require begging. you know what truly hurts? Realizing you abandoned yourself trying to keep other people comfortable. You ignored your intuition, ignored exhaustion, ignored emotional pain, all because you feared losing people. And in the process, you slowly lost yourself instead. That kind of realization changes how a person loves forever. After that, they become more silent emotionally, more private, more protective of their inner world. Not because they became heartless, because they finally understood how dangerous emotional attachment can become when given to the wrong hands. Some people touch your life gently. Others leave psychological damage behind them. Damage that follows you into future conversations, future relationships, future moments of vulnerability. And suddenly, you are apologizing for things that were never your fault. Overthinking harmless messages, preparing emotionally for abandonment before anything even happens. That is what repeated disappointment does to the nervous system. It teaches fear disguised as caution. And eventually, you stop searching for people who complete you. Because you understand now, depending emotionally on unstable people can destroy your peace completely. So your priorities change. Protecting your mind becomes more important than attention. Peace becomes more attractive than excitement. Distance becomes safer than emotional chaos. It is strange. The same person who once begged for connection now disappears to recover alone. The same person who once over-explained every feeling now answers with silence. Not because they no longer care, because caring once almost destroyed them. And after surviving enough emotional darkness, a person starts craving simple things: quiet, stability, honesty. Someone whose presence does not feel emotionally dangerous. Because deep down, they are tired. Tired of surviving relationships instead of feeling safe inside them. And that exhaustion changes a soul permanently. Permanent changes are terrifying. Not because they happen suddenly, because one day you wake up and realize you do not recognize yourself emotionally anymore. The old version of you used to speak with warmth, used to become excited easily, used to believe effort could save people. Now, you hesitate before showing emotion at all, because life taught you something painful. Not everybody values a sincere heart. Some people only value access to it. Access to your attention, your patience, your understanding. And the moment you stop giving endlessly, their energy changes completely. That realization can make a person emotionally numb for a very long time, especially someone who genuinely loved with pure intentions. Because pure people blame themselves first, always. What did I do wrong? Why was I not enough? Why do people leave after I give them everything? Those thoughts destroy people internally. And the saddest part, most of the time, your kindness was never the problem. You simply gave it to emotionally careless people. Emotionally careless people are dangerous. Not because they scream, not because they hate you openly, because they slowly drain the light out of you while pretending everything is normal. And by the time you notice, you are mentally exhausted, emotionally anxious, constantly overthinking. That kind of damage changes the way someone experiences love forever. Now every compliment feels suspicious. Every promise feels temporary. Every connection feels fragile. Not because you became negative, because disappointment repeated itself too many times. You know what emotionally tired people crave the most? Not attention, not popularity, not validation. Safety. Real emotional safety. A place where the nervous system can finally relax, where silence does not mean punishment, where affection does not disappear randomly, where loyalty is not treated like weakness. But after enough heartbreak, people stop believing that kind of peace exists for them. So they adapt instead. They become independent emotionally, detached, controlled. Not because they stopped feeling deeply, because feeling deeply once shattered them completely. And honestly, that is what most people never understand about emotionally damaged souls. They are not cold because they enjoy distance. They became cold trying to survive chaos. Chaos in relationships, chaos in communication, chaos inside their own thoughts. Especially the thoughts. A wounded mind never truly rests. It keeps replaying conversations, analyzing facial expressions, questioning intentions, trying to detect abandonment before it happens again. That level of emotional alertness is exhausting. It drains the soul slowly. And people still wonder why some good humans suddenly disappear emotionally. Because they reached their limit. Their spirit became tired of carrying emotional weight nobody noticed. Tired of understanding everyone, while nobody tried understanding them. Tired of being available, while secretly falling apart alone. And eventually, the heart changes priorities completely. Peace over attachment, distance over drama, silence over emotional confusion. Not because love disappeared, because survival became more important than love. That is the brutal truth. Some people do not become emotionless after pain. They simply stop giving people access to the softest parts of them, because those soft parts were once destroyed without mercy. And once someone experiences that deeply enough, they never return completely to who they were before. And maybe that is the part nobody prepares you for. Not the heartbreak itself, not the betrayal. The aftermath, the quiet psychological aftermath that follows you into ordinary moments. You could be sitting in a peaceful room, hearing nothing, doing absolutely nothing wrong, and suddenly your chest feels heavy again, because memories return without permission. A sentence, a tone, a familiar silence. Tiny things can reopen emotional wounds people thought had already healed. But wounded hearts do not heal in straight lines. Some days you feel powerful. Other days, one memory destroys your entire emotional balance. That inconsistency exhausts people mentally, especially those who suffer silently. The quiet ones, the the strong-looking ones, the people everyone assumes are fine. Funny world. The humans who smile the calmest are sometimes fighting the darkest thoughts alone, thoughts nobody would even suspect. Thoughts about disappearing emotionally, cutting everyone off, stopping effort completely. Not because they hate people, because they are tired of feeling emotionally unsafe around them. There is a specific type of exhaustion that changes personalities permanently. Emotional exhaustion. The kind created by constant disappointment, constant pressure, constant pretending. Pretending you are okay. Pretending you are not hurt. Pretending you are not mentally drowning. That performance destroys people slowly, especially sensitive souls. Because sensitive people absorb everything deeply. The rejection, the disrespect, the emotional inconsistency. And eventually, their nervous system becomes overwhelmed. That is when detachment begins. Not as a choice, as protection. The heart finally says, I cannot survive this amount of pain anymore. So it closes, quietly, without warning. And after that, the person still laughs sometimes, still talks sometimes, still functions normally in public, but internally, something feels missing, something soft, something warm. Because repeated disappointment slowly removed their emotional innocence. Realizing you became emotionally strong through suffering instead of peace. Strong enough to hide pain during conversations. Strong enough to comfort others while secretly breaking. Strong enough to survive nights nobody knows about. But strength built through pain always carries sadness inside it. Always. That is why emotionally damaged people sometimes disappear for no reason. They are trying to recover energy mentally, trying to silence the noise inside their own head, trying to feel like themselves again, even if only for a moment. Because constantly carrying emotional tension changes the body too. The breathing becomes heavier. Sleep becomes strange. The mind refuses to relax completely. Always alert, always expecting disappointment, always emotionally prepared for people to leave. And honestly, that expectation becomes its own kind of prison. You stop enjoying connections naturally, stop trusting peace fully, stop believing happiness will stay long enough to feel safe. So instead of relaxing, you observe, analyze, prepare emotionally, even around people you love. That is what repeated emotional pain does. It turns survival into a permanent mindset. And eventually, you become someone who protects their peace at all costs. Not because you were selfish, because nobody was there protecting your heart when it was breaking quietly. Quiet suffering changes people in ways the outside world never notices. Because pain is strange. Sometimes it screams, sometimes it becomes silent enough to hide behind normal conversations. And those are usually the most dangerous wounds. The invisible ones. The wounds that make a person smile less naturally, trust less easily, disappear more often. Not because they hate humanity, because they no longer feel emotionally safe inside it. There is a heavy loneliness in realizing nobody truly saw how much you were carrying. Not friends, not family, not even the people you stayed loyal to the longest. Everybody noticed the personality change, but almost nobody noticed the suffering that caused it. That realization hardens the spirit. You stop expecting emotional rescue from anyone. Stop believing people will magically understand your silence. Because experience taught you something brutal. Most humans only understand visible pain. If you are bleeding physically, people panic. But emotional bleeding? They call it mood swings. Sensitive souls suffer deeply in this world. They notice everything. The delayed replies, the cold tone, the emotional distance hiding behind fake politeness. And while others move on casually, they sit alone, replaying moments inside their head for hours, trying to understand what changed, trying to understand why kindness keeps ending in disappointment. That mental exhaustion accumulates slowly, like pressure inside a locked room, day after day, month after month, until eventually, the soul becomes tired of carrying emotions openly. That is when people become emotionally unavailable. Not because they stopped feeling, because feeling became too painful. You know what emotionally damaged people fear the most? Not loneliness, false attachment. The kind where someone makes you feel important temporarily, then disappears emotionally once they no longer need you. That experience destroys trust deeply, especially for loyal people. Because loyal people attach sincerely. They mean what they say. They stay longer than they should. And unfortunately, those are usually the people who suffer the most silently. After enough disappointment, a strange transformation begins happening inside a person. They become calmer externally, while internally becoming emotionally exhausted beyond words. The laughter becomes quieter, the excitement fades, the energy changes, not dramatically, slowly, like a light dimming little by little. And one day, they stop expecting deep understanding from anyone entirely. Not in anger, not in hatred, in acceptance. They finally understand most people are fighting their own battles too. Most people are emotionally distracted, emotionally inconsistent, emotionally temporary. So the heart adapts by depending on itself more, protecting itself more carefully. That independence looks cold from the outside, but internally, it was built from survival. Because emotionally exhausted people eventually realize something important. Peace is rare. Real loyalty is rare. Consistency is rare. And once they understand that, they stop giving unlimited access to their heart. No more over-explaining. No more begging people to stay. No more destroying themselves trying to save unstable connections. Instead, they become quieter observers of life, watching people carefully, protecting their energy carefully, protecting their mental stability carefully, because they remember exactly how painful it felt when nobody protected them emotionally. And maybe that is the saddest transformation of all. A once soft soul learning how to survive by becoming emotionally guarded. Not evil, not cruel, just tired of bleeding invisibly. Invisible pain is dangerous because eventually people become so used to hiding it, they forget how to ask for help correctly. They laugh while exhausted, smile while mentally collapsing, comfort others while secretly needing comfort themselves. And after enough years of doing that, the soul becomes confused. Confused about whether anybody truly cares or only cares about the version of you that is useful. That question destroys people internally, especially the quiet ones, the thoughtful ones, the deeply emotional ones who pretend they are fine because they fear becoming a burden. Those people suffer in silence more than anyone realizes. You know what hurts them the most? Not rejection, not insults, feeling emotionally forgotten. Feeling like their existence only matters when they are giving something: energy, attention, support, understanding. But the moment they become emotionally tired, everybody suddenly becomes distant too. That kind of loneliness changes the nervous system. It teaches a person to stop depending emotionally on anyone completely. Not because isolation feels good, because disappointment became too familiar. After enough emotional pain, people stop expressing sadness normally. They hide it inside humor, inside silence, inside disappearing randomly from everyone. Because explaining emotional exhaustion to people who never experienced it feels impossible. So they carry it alone instead, night after night, thought after thought. And honestly, that internal battle is exhausting beyond words. The overthinking, the emotional memories, the constant replaying of painful moments while trying to act normal publicly. It drains the soul slowly. Funny thing is, most emotionally damaged people still remain kind, still respectful, still careful with other people's feelings, even after life was careless with theirs. That is real strength. Not loudness, not aggression. The ability to stay gentle without letting the world destroy your humanity completely. But even strong souls become tired eventually. Tired of carrying invisible sadness. Tired of pretending healing is easy. Tired of surviving emotionally while everyone assumes they are okay. And after enough suffering, they stop searching for people to save them. They start saving themselves quietly instead.